Is it Christmas yet? Hi everyone, it's Mike here. So for day 3 of my 7 days of Christmas, I'm going to make this beautiful mixed media vintage Victorian style tag. Hope you enjoy, and I'll join with you again at the end. So I'm beginning today with a tag that I've created myself from some old corrugated cardboard, and it's exactly the same size as the standard Ranger number 8. And I'm using the Ephemera pack, the Festive Ephemera pack from Holtz, which I've already taken out the pieces that I want to use for the tag. And I've separated them into 2 piles, as you can see, and I'm now going to glue down a collage of the ephemera using the Collall multi-purpose glue. With a project like this, it's not always a good idea to leave things to chance, so as you probably know me by now, I have already laid all these pieces out to make sure I know exactly where they're going to go, how they're going to fit, and how I'm going to put them all down on the paper or on the tag. But as with most best laid plans, this does go a little bit wrong. And as you'll see later on in the video, making mistakes with this one really kind of is the theme. It does happen 2 or 3 times. I do kind of get ahead of myself in some areas, and as you will see, and I will explain and show you where I went wrong and what I did to rectify the problem. And this is where I realised I'd made the first mistake. I hadn't put the first piece of paper at the top far enough down for it to reach the entire bottom when I got down there. So I had to kind of readjust and get another piece of the ephemera from the pack just as a little kind of fill-in piece. It wasn't a huge problem, but even though I'd planned where I wanted to put everything, it didn't quite work out that way in the end. And making changes on the fly is part and parcel of doing artwork and mixed media, so just adding a little bit in doesn't really make that much difference. It doesn't alter the way that it looks in the end, and if I hadn't have told you, you probably would never have noticed anyway. So it's one of those things where I'm being totally open and transparent and telling you exactly where things go wrong, because I do make mistakes just like everybody else. So now I've added in my little filler piece. You're never going to notice the difference, and unless it's pointed out, nobody's going to know. I'm now going to leave this for about 1/4 of an hour just for the glue to set so that it's dry enough for me to be able to trim back to the shape that I want. And another thing that went totally wrong today was that the lighting that I use has developed a mind of its own. You'll see that the lighting levels do change, do fluctuate, because they just started, for some strange reason, to dim and then brighten and dim and brighten. So I've had to try and adjust the video so you kind of don't really notice that much. So now that my tag is trimmed back to its original shape, it's time to get out the white gesso. For this, I'm using the white gesso, the Gee-Sso Good from IndigoBlu, and I'm just going to add some water to my gesso on my craft mat just to water it down so I can do a very thin whitewash over the top of the tag. At this stage it may look like I've covered up most of the tag, but when I've heat set the gesso in place you will see that it does die back quite a lot and that you will still be able to see the pattern underneath. Now the tag's dry, it's time to bring out the distress crayons. This is the vintage photo from set number 3, and I'm just going to add a little bit of that vintage photo just into the creases and the folds where those bits of ephemera meet, just to kind of add a little depth and dimension and a little bit of shadow. I also want to add some distress around the edges, so for that I'm going to use the Potting Soil Archival ink, which is now my go-to permanent archival ink instead of the vintage photo distress ink, which is water-based and non-permanent. This one is totally permanent, so this is the one that I now use 99% of the time. So to start adding some festive bling, I'm bringing out my gold embossing paste from Studio 490 and Wendy Vecchi, and I'm going to use the Tim Holtz Flourish layering stencil, and I'm going to put this embossing paste through the stencil over the top portion and the bottom portion of the tag. Now this embossing paste looks kind of brownish and kind of caramelly, but when it actually dries it turns gold. Now you can't see that at the moment because it's still wet, but in a moment I'll bring out my heat gun and start heat setting it, and then once it's started to turn I'll hold it up to the camera for you so you can see the nice shine. So I'm just going to grab my heat gun and gently start to heat it, and as it starts to dry it starts to shine and that gold shimmer starts to show through. Look at that, how beautiful. So I'm going to pop the tag to one side now to let it dry on its own, and I'm going to start working on the embellishments for the front of my tag. Now these are a couple of the pieces of ephemera from that Tim Holtz festive pack, and using the Potting Soil Archival ink I'm just going to go around adding a little bit of dirt, a little bit of distress and a little bit of aging. So I also want to add a little bit of fraying to the papers as well. So I'm just going to use the blade of a pair of scissors, add a couple of tears into that paper just to make it look like it's really old and very tatty. And of course, where I've scraped away the archival ink on the edges, I'm going to put it back again afterwards. So now it's time to start assembling the embellishments onto my tag. As you can see, that embossing paste has now dried beautifully, and again just using the multi-purpose glue from Collol, I'm just going to stick down the music sheet and also the Santa and Little Girl onto the top, and then I can start adding on my poinsettia embellishments, and for that I'm going to add some foam pads, some 3D foam pads. These are tiny 3mm by 3mm square ones, and I'm just going to add those to the back just to give it a little bit of depth and dimension. So now that's the last of my embellishments going down on the front of the card. As you can see, it's now starting to look very, very much like Christmas. So the next step, I decide to add some gold glitter glue. These are gold stickles from Ranger. And of course, like a complete idiot, I decide to add them now rather than at the end. And of course, this means that I'm now going to start getting my fingers and my hands in them every single time I try and do something, like adding the ribbons and the fibres at the top. So as you can see, I've cut a couple of lengths of the ribbon and I'm just rolling them so I can get them through the hole in the top of the tag. And of course, being very, very careful, trying not to smudge the glitter glue because it's still very wet. I never like to heat set glitter glue because you just never know how it's going to react with the heat. So I'm trying my hardest to get the knot done without getting my fingers or catching the glitter glue on the tag and smudging it. So as you can see, I'm just adjusting the ribbons now, and then I'm going to just trim them to equal lengths, and then that's when I suddenly realise that I shouldn't have put the ribbons on just yet because I've forgotten to do one very important thing. So one great mistake leads to another. So once I've actually finished cutting the ribbons to the right length, I suddenly realise that I'm going to have to take them all off again. So I decided that I was going to add another little tag to it, but as I'm doing this I'm thinking to myself, hang on a minute, I haven't decorated the back of the tag yet and I've already put the ribbons through. So how am I going to decorate the back if I've already got the ribbons through the top of the tag? So guess what? I have to take the whole lot back out again just so I can decorate the back. This is what I meant about getting ahead of yourself. So I went one step too far and forgot altogether about decorating the back. So I then have to start unpicking the ribbons. So now that the ribbons are back out again, I can start to decorate the back of the tag. And to do this, I've printed off a sheet of paper that I purchased from Emerald City Crafts UK on Etsy, which is part of a steampunk pack, but I thought the pattern worked really, really well as a Victorian kind of vintage back or wallpaper kind of effect on the back. So I'm covering the entire piece of paper with the glue, the Collall multi-purpose again, and I'm just going to lay my tag over the top because the glitter glue is still wet, so I am still trying to make sure I keep my fingers well away. So now, before I can trim the excess paper from around the tag, I have to wait for the glue to dry, so which will take about 15 minutes. So I'm just going to have to sit and twiddle my thumbs. So it's been about 20 minutes, so it's now dry enough for me to be able to just grab my scalpel and remove the excess paper from around the outside of the tag. And then of course I need to distress it, so out comes the potting soil archival ink, and I'm going to go all the way around the tag. But of course the glitter glue is still wet, so I still have to be very, very mindful not to smudge it. And because I've papered over the hole where the ribbons go through, I just have to re-punch that hole back out again. So I'm just going to punch through and then remove the piece of paper and then grab the archival ink and just give that a little bit of a dirty up as well. So we're now back to that point where we can add the ribbons, and I've decided this time I'm just going to add that red satin ribbon to the tag. So I'm just going to cut a couple of pieces and thread them through and then tie them in a knot. And then I can add my little paper 25 tag on with that little piece of string. So after adding that piece of ribbon back through, I decide it's not long enough, and I also want to do 2 pieces. So I've got 4 of the fibres sticking out the top. So I'm going to loop up 2 pieces, a little bit longer this time, and make it a little bit more fuller and a little bit more plush. It's a great word, isn't it? Plush. So all my ribbons are now through, so I just need to make them equal lengths and try not to make the ends too raggy. And then I can add my little paper tag to the back also. So once I've tied the twine around the top of the knot on the tag, I can just trim off the excess from the ends, and that's it. The tag that's it, it's done, it's finished. Yay! Well, I hope you enjoyed that beautiful vintage Victorian style tag. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up, share the video with all your friends, and if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, you can do so by clicking the button at the end of the video. Thank you once again, and I will be back again tomorrow with another project. That's all from me. Bye for now.